Is Tyler Perry sort of getting frustrated by his association with Harry and Meghan, in particular, Meghan, because he had a very dismissive and I would argue very undiplomatic response to a Times of London author asking him about Harry and Meghan and their move, and Tyler Perry lending them his home, his jet, whole bunch of things, even allegedly security as well. And I can't help but think, did Tyler never think this would ever come up in a conversation, especially with a British publication? But what I also thought was rather interesting is that I think Tyler Perry's antagonism towards the question is based off a false assumption that Meghan Markle has given him, because Meghan Markle has tried time and time again to the rest of the world to tell us, oh, it was just the awful British media that made her life very difficult, when in fact it was really Meghan Markle. And the Times, of course, is perfectly aware of that and is trying to actually discuss that with Tyler. But of course, he's not having it because Meghan Markle had an agenda to sell him. And it was a sob story that he bought into. And you can't help but wonder, is he starting to think that all of that was a bit of hooey? Because he didn't seem all that friendly with her in some ways at the Paley Center event recently there to honor him. So I thought this would be an interesting topic of discussion. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentary. So if you guys would like to hit that subscribe button, please do. We would love to have you back. We talk about all things related to royals. I also have royal fashion news, and I just did an amazing both live stream, and I have a video I'll be doing soon on Queen Mary debuting a new tiara she created from the Danish crown jewels. So if you guys want to check that channel out, I would love for you to. We talk about all things related to royal fashion because it is the place for those who have a passion for royal fashion. So guys, go ahead and check out that video by following the link up above. All right, so when I saw these first comments, of course, it was sort of a negative slant in the Daily Mail, but I was thinking to myself, do I want to just do a short on this? But then I'm like, no. My thoughts on this are more, you could say, complex and something I could fit into a minute or 3 minutes. So I thought, let's do a video on it. Now, Tyler Perry, if you don't know, is a producer, actor, director who has, I would argue, I don't know how much of his stuff I've seen. So if you're unfamiliar, this is him. I haven't really seen that much of his stuff. Like, he did the Medea franchise and a whole bunch of other things, but not all the things that are really, you could say, to my taste. So I'm not really super familiar with his work. I've seen him in a thing or two, but it's not really something I pay much attention to. But he was honored for this award at the Paley Center, and the Times of London decided to interview him. And of course, this may bother him, and I imagine it would. It says, Tyler Perry, the billionaire who lent Harry and Meghan his LA home. Now, I want to talk about this initially because to a UK audience, most likely this is the only reason they recognize his name. Now, I can't be definitive in that, but some of the roles where he's a bit smaller or doesn't have quite as much of his stamp on a production, people don't really know who he is. Like, even in the United States, I'm not even aware of how he's made $1 billion, to be quite honest, because I've never seen much of his work. But he is obviously a really, really good businessman. The stuff he makes is not to my taste. But I will say as well, I've been listening to some podcasts talking about Hollywood and everything. And when it comes to selling things abroad, comedy doesn't always translate all that well. Now, it's a bit different since obviously we speak English both in the UK and in America, but I would imagine some of his humor probably wouldn't translate well to a British audience, if I'm being quite honest. Now, you're free to correct me in the comments, but I think they did it this way because this is how he's most recognizable to the British. And they want to get the most legs out of this article as possible because they might have flown somebody out there to cover him. And this was the best thing they could do. But I imagine he's not super happy about it because he wants to be known for his own success, not just being connected to Harry and Meghan. And of course, they show this still here from Harry and Meghan's reality TV show where he's there. They're on his property that he lent them. And so the interviewer decided to ask a bit about this time period, and it didn't go particularly well for him. So here is the bit where he asks about it, and he is asked, how did he prepare the couple for their move to America? And he said, I didn't. Any conversational intimacy evaporating. Now, I would argue, and I don't know, like, this could be an interesting question, and it's one where I'm curious if the guy decided to ask this earlier or later in the interview, because technically you should probably ask this question later if you're thinking to yourself, "Hey, this might get a rise out of him. This might get, this might be baiting him a bit. He might get a bit aggressive with this response. So let's wait until later." Or this is the other interesting thought that Tyler should have considered, which didn't, is that the guy really doesn't really care that much about Tyler Perry in some ways, and was just thinking this wouldn't elicit much of a response because it's just almost a throwaway question. So that would be interesting. And I would argue too, this is what Tyler should have done, and he didn't, which is just to say, "I don't want to talk about them. Let's talk about me and my work. Let's leave them alone." But he doesn't. And you got to wonder why, because he's an experienced guy when it comes to matters like this. He should know better than to be snappy and snippy with a reporter. But let's go on. He says Meghan is from California. She knows California well. So there's nothing to prepare them for. I will say this, what I learned from mentioning them, because there's this insatiable appetite to know all about them, is that any question that is asked becomes the headline of anything I say. So then why did you say anything? That is my immediate question. But I think he's missing something here, which is that he thinks this is, and he goes into this a bit later, is that he thinks it's all about the British. He thinks this all is driven by the British press. But really, as somebody who's watched Reels for a really long time, I firmly believe, especially in the beginning, Meghan was feeding the media beast constantly about herself. Constantly, constantly, constantly. She is a D-list actress type. She saw her window and she went at it hard. And the negative reaction here, I think, personally, is that he failed to understand that by mentioning them, by associating with them, he associates with all that baggage that they have. And that baggage got worse with Oprah, with Netflix, with Spare. All of that became worse. And that is a Harry and Meghan created problem. They fed the media beast. Again, I go back to this, and I know I actually have some people who have gone on tours with me, and you know who you are, who I've mentioned. Every time I say this, it makes you laugh. But Prince Harry, nobody knew that about your frostbitten penis at your brother's wedding until you told us. Nobody knew as well that you thought of your dead mother while rubbing cream that she used to have on your nether regions. Nobody told us that but you. Nobody told us that but you. And what that did is that it fed the media narrative. It fed the beast. And the beast is never fully satisfied. That's why you have to very much, if you are royal, you have to tiptoe around things. You have to be very careful to give the press some, but not so much that you become tabloid fodder. Harry and Meghan created the tabloid fodder about themselves. And so he says back, because the interviewer asks, "Why is the appetite so insatiable? If you're from the UK, you tell me." And Tyler is revealing something about himself, is that I still think he has put everything in his whole understanding of the Harry and Meghan situation is based upon what Meghan has told him and what Harry has told him. I've gone over time and time again how Harry's completely and utterly deluded about the media. He has no clue what is actually going on and why everything is so negative about him and Meghan. And Meghan portraying her own sad victim narrative. "Oh, the UK press was so mean to me," to Tyler, him believing it, him making assumptions based on that. And what I forgot to add is that the Times of London is not even a tabloid. They're not even going for these headlines that I'm sure Tyler Perry in his mind is railing against when it comes to Meghan Markle. The Times of London is the one who exposed her alleged bullying and is a very, very respectable publication. They don't go for the nasty stories. They just sort of stick to the reporting the news, basically. Sometimes, yes, they have something maybe they insert with a little bit of a slant, but it's pretty solid reporting. So he's actually going after a publication that is actually not doing what he's thinking they're doing to Meghan, the, of course, ultimate victim. And that is getting this response, because the interviewer very cleverly says the headlines are just as plentiful in America. And they are. They are, because America has its own press. A lot of Americans don't like Harry and Meghan either. They have fed the negative narrative, and the negative narrative has not stopped. And when you associate with Harry and Meghan, you associate with the negative narrative. And so if I was Tyler Perry, I would have not have invited her to the Paley Center, because the negative narrative not only does it completely overshadow your event, which it did, but it's just that you associate continually with the negative narrative that she started. And it's just continuing to chug and chug along. And with her weird and strange behavior, it just gets worse. And so I don't understand why he doesn't get that, because he's obviously a smart guy. And so he responds, I guess, you think, well, you would know better than I because I'm not paying attention to that world. It's clearly time to cut, next scene. So that's what the author says. But he's saying here, well, you would know better than I. Well, shouldn't you be aware of what people are saying about people who are your good friends? Because I'm sure he is aware of it. Because I thought it was kind of interesting watching some of the interaction, because I didn't think Tyler Perry was that into her, to be quite honest. He looked ready to move on from her and everything. Because what I think happens with Meghan and her Hollywood type friends is that she sort of gloms onto them and then she suffocates them because she's too needy. She has her victim narrative. She is very sweet and kind, but it kind of goes too far, and it gets to the point where they're just kind of done with it. And I'd be interested to know if Tyler's starting to get to that point where he's like, okay, I've indulged them for a while, but I'm kind of sort of done, but she won't go away. And Meghan doesn't want to go away because Meghan needs the money, she needs the attention, she needs so many different things that Tyler just really doesn't have time to give her. Like, nobody really has time to give her, to be quite honest, except for maybe her husband. But Tyler, of course, did himself a massive disservice by associating with Harry and Meghan. I want to say, and this may sound bad, but nothing really good comes from associating with them anymore because their public perception is so entirely negative. And that is something driven by Harry and Meghan. Tyler Perry can't blame the media for what has happened to Harry and Meghan. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's 100% their fault. I'm bummed I didn't start my channel earlier because I had been watching royals for a long time. And when Meghan entered the picture, like it's hard to describe. And I don't think you could actually, unless you were following it at the time in terms of like doing videos and stuff, really being able to portray it. But the amount of leaks we got, the amount of crazy stories we got and everything like triplicated overnight when Meghan entered the picture. And I remember there's a commentator named Shallon Lester who mentioned that she used to work in tabloid journalism, and she said a bit like once Meghan entered the picture, the palace went from a steel trap to a leaky ship. And the thing I find most interesting is that because of this leaky ship thing, you even have people who, yes, are royal commentators and stuff like that, people like me. But I feel like they're fueling things even more because there's such an insatiable appetite for negative attention on Harry and Meghan, negative narratives, negative stories. And so people regurgitate things time and time again. They go even back to old stories. We've seen this a bit in the Daily Mail recently. And that is because people don't like Harry and Meghan. And because they don't like Harry and Meghan, they're fully interested in negative stories about them. And if you associate with Harry and Meghan, you associate with those negative stories. And those negative stories are just not going to go away. Harry and Meghan themselves are not going to go away. And that is, I think, a disaster for somebody like Tyler Perry, who has built his media empire off, you could say, great successes. But once you associate with Harry and Meghan, that becomes sort of all you're known for in some circles. And so it's best, almost in some ways, to really keep your association with them pretty minimal. It's why a lot of people don't associate with them very publicly, because they look at Harry and Meghan and they go, ooh, I don't really want to associate with that because I don't want that to become part of my media story. Because you'll notice Kerry Washington was also there, but was she on the red carpet with Meghan Markle? No.
And although we don't know the exact reason, I could see Kerry Washington's people saying, okay, you're going to be maybe near Meghan Markle, seated next to Meghan Markle, whatever, but sort of avoid actually getting your picture taken with her or looking too cozy. And you notice the same thing happened with Oprah Winfrey, really. Although she posed in a picture with Meghan Markle and Tyler Perry, there was no Oprah and Meghan picture. Why? Because I think people want to keep their distance from her.
The connection to Meghan Markle tends to lead you down a downward spiral. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and I shall see you very soon. Bye.